Researching a thriller that's based on a true story is like browsing a political dark web, where secrets are found hiding in plain sight, and which link to other events in history that you never realized had a connection at all.
The confrontation between Britain and Argentina over the Falkland Islands is escalating quickly.
We're talking the 1982 political thriller Missing, which explores the jigsaw puzzle of the disappearance of Charles Horman, an American citizen in a foreign land. He was unfortunate enough to be in Chile during the military coup of 1973, a coup that would see the installment of General Pinochet as national leader, a man who would launch a campaign of terror against his own people that would leave thousands of them dead. The film is based on a book by Thomas Hauser, which was republished under the name Missing upon the film's release in 1982. The screenplay was co-written by Costa-Gavras, whose direction of the film was disliked by some critics of the time who weren't as familiar with his non-linear style of storytelling as we are today.
Is in love with this device of flashing back to various versions of what may or may not have happened, the mystery they're trying to solve.
And a mystery it is after American citizen Charles Horman visits Chile's Viña del Mar, said to be the birthplace of the coup. Forced to stay a few days at the hotel, he meets several US military personnel who seem to boast about being instrumental in that coup. A fellow American tells Charles that he's not a tourist, but that the US Navy sent him to do a job, and now that job is done. Charles and Terry finally manage to get back to Santiago, and he's overjoyed to find his wife Beth safe and well. But soon, Beth misses her last bus home before the curfew and spends a terrifying night on the streets. She spends all night hiding before making her way home the moment that the curfew is lifted. What she finds when she gets there is a ransacked house and her husband missing. And with the arrival of Charles Horman's father Ed to help in the search, so begins a frustrating true story of claim, counterclaim, and deliberate misinformation that isn't part of the puzzle at all. Though the events in Missing take place in 1973, the story really begins in 1970, with the election of Salvador Allende and his Popular Unity Alliance. Allende was solidly left-wing, and he quickly forged links with the Soviet Union and that ever-troublesome neighbor of the United States, Cuba. Both the Soviet Union and the United States had been involved in the Chilean election that year by funding the political parties that were acceptable to them and by trying to defame the others. The US was far from happy with Allende's narrow victory in the election, and Nixon's national security advisor of the time, Henry Kissinger, saw Chile as a dagger pointing right at America's heart. Both the US and the Soviet Union were playing Cold War games all over Central and South America during the 1970s, a part of the world that the United States saw as its own backyard. It came as no surprise then when Allende's fragile government met a sticky end. The military coup of 9/11, 1973 resulted in Allende's death and Pinochet's installment as unchallenged dictator. In this scene, Beth Harmon argues with officials who say that Americans aren't being arrested, and she mentions the names of 2 American friends who were arrested. Those Americans were journalist David Holloway and his colleague Frank Terusci. They were arrested by military police and transported to the National Stadium in Santiago, which had been turned into a makeshift concentration camp for the interrogation and torture of prisoners. Terusci is another US citizen that would go missing in the aftermath of the military coup. Horman's wife, whose name in real life is Joyce Horman, was interviewed by the website Democracy Now! In 2013 about her experiences in Chile.
I did not get back that night because of the curfew. The buses stopped running, and as the movie Missing portrays, I was in a stairwell for the night. When I got back to the house the next morning, I found the house completely ransacked. I guess it was the next day, neighbors from our old neighborhood got a call from the military intelligence saying, do you know an extremist gringo with a beard? And it terrified our neighbors, but it told us that the military actually had Charles. And the next opportunity I had, I went to the embassy actually to announce that he'd been taken and that I wanted their help to find him and get him out.
In 1975, Chile would be instrumental in forming an alliance between a cluster of South American dictatorships with the blessing of the United States. This Sinister Six would ultimately include Chile, Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. The alliance would share intelligence on undesirable left-wing elements in those territories, and it's been estimated that up to 60,000 people may have been executed in the name of Condor. But it was a miscalculation by Argentina's General Leopoldo Galtieri that would sound its death knell. In 1982, only months after taking power, Galtieri would try to settle a long-standing dispute with Britain over the nearby Malvinas Islands, known to Britain as the Falkland Islands.
By 7 a.m., after fierce fighting, Government House was completely surrounded.
Meanwhile, in Argentina, they've been celebrating all day, from the most decorated general down to the humblest man in the street.
Probably encouraged by the relationship the US had fostered with his country through Operation Condor, Galtieri's hope was that the US would back Argentina's claim to the Malvinas against Britain. He thought wrong.
Argentina must be made aware that if war breaks out, the United States will firmly back the British. Senator Joseph Biden was at that briefing. He's a Democratic senator who is sponsoring a resolution in support of Great Britain.
Those kind of stories, if true, would imply a deeper commitment by the United States to Britain's cause at the expense of its relations with Latin America.
Well, the commitment is exactly the one stated by the President, and it is a full and complete one.
Britain's victory in the war would severely weaken the Argentine military and allow democracy to return to the country in 1983. Operation Condor would be officially scrapped that same year. The events of missing predate both Operation Condor and the Falklands War. But this Costa-Gavras film does a great job of illustrating the horror to come for South America and its people. Feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. There's plenty more to come from my DVD collection, including thrillers, comedies, action, science fiction, drama, adventure, and horror.